So fintech, like financial technologies, huge amount of investment and innovation happening in that space. That is a very interesting thing to kind of talk about in relation to financialization, the technological dimension. And then as part of that is a kind of another subset of the technological thrust, which is referred to as proptech, property technology. And, so even something like Zillow, I mean, when we really think, like, what is the role of Zillow in moving things along that liquidity spectrum? Like, some of these things are very subtle but profound, right? Like, think of like the ease at which to explore properties around
And
the
also, yeah, like the liquid dollar figure is right there if you're exploring Zillow.
totally
Yeah.
instantaneous mortgage pre-approval. Anyway, so something like Zillow, so the prop tech, but the most famous property technology out there, I think, is, and most disruptive, is Airbnb. So alongside Zillow, something like Airbnb. I guess why I'm bringing Zillow up, I think it's interesting to think of all of these in a kind of a connected techno milieu that is all playing a role in financialization. But yes, absolutely, Airbnb has radically changed how many people relate to the pieces of architecture, the pieces of buildings or buildings that they live in, purchase, or not live in. And in this kind of shift to seeing them, pieces of architecture, more and more as assets and tools to speculate upon and to derive wealth from, there's no question that Airbnb has really accelerated this. The ability for people to be like, okay, I can't afford this property based on my assets and income right now, but I can easily incorporate into my kind of spreadsheet the ability to rent out this suite for portions of the time when I'm here. And therefore, and I can show this to the lender and therefore afford something that I couldn't otherwise afford.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but is that a commonplace thing now as a way, like you can say in your application for a mortgage that you're going to put part of your unit up for Airbnb, and that is seen as like a new income source for people seeking more?
Absolutely.
I mean, that seems really, really dodgy. And like we maybe should have learned a lesson or two from 15 years ago that this is what we're granting mortgages based on. That's crazy.
Yeah, no, these things are absolutely can be taken into consideration with lenders for sure. Yeah, absolutely. So and then, I mean, fascinating, all these kind of literal changes in way buildings are inhabited, right? These kind of, like people living, it's like that, I can't afford this house at all, but I can do it with the thing that I just described, but I'm gonna, like, me and my partner are gonna live in the driveway in an Airstream trailer and rent the entire house out. And once the financial dynamics shift a little bit, we'll stop, and endless numbers of permutations. So it's affecting how people are buying, why they are buying, and then literally how they are inhabiting and using their space. And in some cases also physically building their spaces. I mean, things are more built to accommodate these kind of phenomena now.
So my last question really is based on the usage of these units, architecture, real estate, as a mode of wealth accumulation, even though it appears a bit different than it did in 2007, the precariousness is still there, except it's just manifesting itself in a little bit of a different way. What is your opinion on the real estate market right now as it relates to being a foundational piece of our global economy?
Yeah. I think the hyper financialization of the built environment was something that's, like triggered the last 2007, 2008 mega crisis. And there's, I think, no question that things have become even more financialized and more precarious since then. What happens in the future is anyone's guess, but I think in many ways, there's a really great book. It's actually sitting right next to me, but it's called In Defense of Housing by David Madden and Peter Marcuse. And they make the point that we often talk about crises and housing crises. And so there's so much conversation about that right now. The housing crisis built around the precarity that you're referring to and the insane affordability challenges in cities around the world. But they make the point in this book, which is a point I agree with, that it's always in this hyper financialized capitalist modality, there is always a housing crisis. So when the next crisis with a capital C comes, it will be the system working how it is currently designed to work, right? I mean, the 2007-2008 crisis obviously had an incredibly negative impact on millions and millions of people's lives. But in parallel, it had a very quote unquote positive impact on another set of people's lives. It afforded a lot of investment opportunity. And, and in many ways, it was the system working the way in which it's currently designed to work. And so, I think we as a society have to radically think how housing and real estate operate if we want to achieve something more equitable and not in essentially a permanent state of crisis that just becomes radically apparent at certain moments of drops, right? But so will there be another crisis with a capital C? Dramatic? Yes. When exactly it happens, I don't know. Will it be dramatic? Surely it will.
Well, we're in a crisis now with,
Yeah.
the rental market. It is the fact that we have commodified housing to this degree and now hyper-commoditized it as a function of finance capitalism and wealth accumulation it is unconscionable.